Recording in progress. Um, Welcome. I want to firstly, I would love for you to just kind of maybe restate some of the things that you were talking about this morning, because that definitely caught my interest, and I don't really have like anything in particular I was hoping to talk about, but that really caught my interest because that's very, I think, resonant with some of the stuff I've been thinking about and looking at most closely recently. So if you
Yeah,
would,
yeah, for sure. So basically, I was mentioning um, a topic that arose during a discussion I had with Thomas Jokin earlier this evening, and it had to do with something called timbre. So Thomas was mentioning how timbre affects, let's say, musical instruments and the differences between the various instruments. For example, let's say the string-based instruments like guitar or bass, and um, the pneumatic instruments like the sax or the flute, and how those instruments like the flute and the saxophone, they are capable of expressing even a deeper, let's say, um, sense of emotionality and therefore also musicality. And I made this connection basically that I am also interested in this aspect of timbre from the perspective of the um, our vocal cords. And for example, there is also the notion of vocal timbre, because at the end of the day, the human voice is a beautiful musical instrument as well. And we can use it to either sing, but also to perform, let's say, um, an art like declamation or something that is akin to rhetoric, let's say, so or even oration. So
yeah.
yeah, that was the let's say the highlight of my
Yeah,
conversation over there. So you also mentioned that you are interested in this aspect.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, in many respects, to be honest, I think there's like so many different threads we could go down. I'm particularly curious about you are, I guess maybe one place to start would be you mentioned about the um I don't know, just this topic of like the rhetoric aspect, how it can be used, or you had also said that uh it can communicate not just like the emotion, but like it can kind of something about like that it's like when people know how to do that, then something else is possible, like in terms of the person hearing them. Do you remember like a, or do you have something to say about that perhaps?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically, let me share one example. For example, when a speaker uses a form of a warm, let's say, or a smooth timbre, it can actually create a sense of trust to the audience, and not only trust but also intimacy. And another example will be when the timbre is like sharp or even brassy. It can be used to convey excitement and something akin to enthusiasm. And we can understand that this type of emotions can be transferred from the person that delivers, let's say, the speech to the audience, if we are discussing in that particular setting. Now, if we are discussing about a conversation, once again, the same thing applies, but it is, I think it is a great exercise to think about it in terms of um, one person delivering a speech to a crowd. So if the crowd is moved, it's because of the intonation and the variation in the voice and the inflections and all of that. And
There's
there
so
is
many.
Mhm.
there's so many angles. Like yeah, I think this is like
Yeah.
very. All right, I don't want to cut you off if you had one more thing to say there.
No,
Um,
please.
okay, yeah, like I mean, basically, I think that something like this, like I think that right now that all that happens largely unconsciously,
Mhm.
such that like I do think there's a way where people learn how to do it and they get better at it, but even then, they're not fully aware of, of course, uh, at like the ultimate metaphysical level, we'll never truly like know at an ultimate level what's exactly going on, of course, but like, like I think there's still a noteworthy um, unconsciousness about it, such that even people who are very good at it and practice at kind of the musicality of speaking or something like that, like the timbre of uh, practicing the instrument of the human voice, that they still aren't like, this is what I'm doing. Like they're not thinking. It's not fully a conscious thing. And basically, what I'm saying is like I think that we're um, kind of moving in a direction where people learn to almost like master that ability or something like that. Because I also think that um, I mean, I'm just kind of stumbling because there's so many angles. Uh, like I think that also happens in our, as I mentioned briefly at the start, I think that also happens um, in the timbre of our movement, one might say, like such that there is kind of a musical,
Yeah.
if I smile, I can communicate through
Yeah.
that musical happening because it is like a patterned happening, the smile, right? Like it's a pattern that we recognize and it's a pattern in time such that it's not just like a static emoji. It's like it's the sequence that we resonate with the order of it, such that like I actually think that it happens in this temporal way as well, where we basically sync up in a pattern, like we resonate with the same pattern, like we recognize the pattern and we act it out in resonance or something. But I think that also applies to our nonverbal being.
Mhm.
And the reason why I think that's super interesting is because that rides the border between conscious and unconscious, such that we're always doing it. It's like
Yeah.
we're always speaking non-verbally, but um, we often don't kind of realize that. And I think it's an interesting thing because it makes it very clear that obviously we don't want to be totally in control of our gesture, just like, but also it's not to suggest that we should just not care about this faculty, or like be completely blind to it. It's that maybe there's a way of learning to really speak through our words and the timbre of our voice and our our gesture and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the fact that you said the fact that you said this morning, I was like, or that you were just talking about this, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm most interested in. And also
that comes up in music notation a lot
Mm.
because you've got like someone delivering, here's the notes you have to manufacture to recreate this melody, but like any musician knows that's not really the message. The message is like in the crescendos and the
Yeah.
You're more of a musician than I, so you probably know more of those terms.
Well, have you ever read the lyrics to a song that you've never heard before? It's oftentimes just an incredibly cringe-making experience. It's a bit of a sort of known fact, I think, among artists. I may be wrong about this, that you'd think that poets would be good at writing lyrics and good lyricists would be good at writing poetry, but they're actually not as translatable as you might think. If you try to take a poem and set it to music, it's actually incredibly difficult to do. I have a friend who worked with a very esteemed poet, and the idea was, it was sort of a musician friend and the esteemed poet, and they were going to come together and create a song, and I think it kind of didn't work in the end, because it turns out that good poets don't make good lyrics, and it's because if you read these lyrics, it's just like really weird. If you can't hear the tune and the phrasing, it's a bit sort of clunky, or it sounds a bit bad. And I'm thinking here, maybe like reading the Bible in translation is a bit like reading the lyrics to a song without knowing what the music is, without knowing what the phrasing is supposed to be. And it just makes it sound a bit more clunky and almost like have a different message.
I think with the Quran, they definitely take that approach.
Absolutely.
So every verse is going to have a set melody that maybe you can improvise or add little flourishes, but then I think they would believe that musicality is just as sacred to the meaning of the text as the shape of the letters.
Yeah, well, that's why, I mean, I have found Qurans that are just written in English, but you almost always find Qurans with the English printed next to the Arabic, because there's this sort of overt recognition that, okay, we're going to translate this into English, but you have to recognize that this is a compromise because the language of the recitation is Arabic, and there's something in the phrasing, in the pronunciation, in the way that it's so melodic, that is part of, not only part of the message itself, but also part of the very proof of its divinity. There's a sort of test in the Quran to produce something so well put together, so genius, so beautiful, so perfect, which is something that just can't be captured in a translation. And I think actually people just tend to forget this more when they're reading the Bible. They forget just how much a translation can completely alter our interpretation of the words. We're talking here about full stops. It seems maybe a little more trivial than some other examples. I mean, there are so many translation differences which are absolutely huge. I'm thinking of like Paul in the New Testament writing about women.
Is very malleable depending on what assumption you have about what it's supposed to be sounding like.
I was also talking with Formscapes recently about, he's been looking at the are you familiar with Formscapes at all? Have you seen that channel? I think you would like that channel.
I remember the name Formscapes.
Yeah, his logo is the one where it's the colors with the planetary glyphs, and he's kind of like, the other thing that's really interesting about what you're describing is that which is communicated, it's not just like information, right? It's not an objective thing that's communicated, or just like it's like a I guess you could say it's more subjective than objective, but obviously these are kind of perhaps unhelpful terms. It's that it's an experience. It's the primacy of experience, that like when somebody communicates rhetorically, hopefully in a sincere way, that's not like being manipulative, hopefully like what's communicated is the experience of the speaker, or that which they are trying to get the audience to experience, and it's like, I think that's interesting as well, because connecting it to Formscapes, it kind of works into this idea of like the Goethean way of thinking about science, where it's more like the experiential qualia are what comes first, and it's embedded in our language basically, or something like that. So I'll stop there. I want to
okay, very, very interesting points. Basically, I completely agree with you. Like, first of all, there is a very specific reason that I am calling declamation both an art and a science. So it's both of those things, and it is a science because you can actually teach it, and it's not a lot of things that actually can be taught in this life. And it's also an art because you can see the actual results. Let's say, like when you engage with a speaker that they are very passionate, let's say, or they are capable of utilizing all these different, let's say, elements, like not only by coloring, let's say, their vocal timbre, or changing from smooth to sharp, let's say, their intonation, but also by incorporating gestures in their way of speaking. Like, and you can see this with great speakers, that they are actually also great communicators, because they are using their hands a lot, and they are capable of effectively conveying their message. And all these non-verbal communication cues. Of course, they can be misused. I am certain that some people in the past or even now, they are using them in dark arts. Let's call it like that.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, in terms of persuasion and all of that. But it can also be utilized in a good way, and I really believe that.
Yeah.
And in a way, I also think that this is one of those things that the ancients were very well aware of that. We completely forgot about it. We modern people, and I am honestly trying to reclaim that part of declamation, and I really find it both beautiful and helpful and fascinating. So
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. I mean, I have to take notes. The older times. So speaking about how in putting it into gesture and stuff, and how usually you see that people who are good at speaking are also very embodied, like they're very they're able to speak through their body. Like this reminds me of Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, who said that speech kind of evolves out of gesture, such that it's like there's a way where, if you really think about it, what the larynx is basically performing very complicated gestures. Like it's all one thing, like the body movements. It's like so one might say that speaking is like the quintessence of gesture or something. It's like the perfection, the highest expression of body movement or something like that. And that's and he had this idea of eurythmy, which is very in keeping with that, like but I won't go all into that at the moment. So the larynx performs this function of gesture, but perhaps there's a way where, like, if we understand that it's all gesture, he also connected it with the ear, and he said that, like, you have to be able to hear as well to do the speaking thing. But anyway, so that's that one thing. Another thing you said about like that it can be used for both good and bad. I definitely agree with that, because the way that I think about it is actually as a technology, like almost like clothing, where clothing can either hide or it can ornament in a way that reveals the essence of something. Like Peugeot talks about how, like, that which is on the fringe can, like, either be like garments of death, or like transfigured, such that they add to the fullness or something, like in the New Jerusalem is the way I think about it. And the technology aspect, you have like kind of almost the symbolism of medicine as well, where it's like you see, like, it can be it can be bad, but if you use it appropriately, then, and like this idea where technology is kind of like an ambivalent thing that has to be it's all about the right relationship with it, So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And really, to accentuate the good side, because as human beings we like to focus on the bad sides, like the good side, I think that this is actually the medium by which things like exorcism or something like that, exorcism, and also
evangelism,
like healing of any kind. Maybe that's like a jump going all the way to the extreme of exorcism, but like basically I think that anytime two people understand each other, it's because there's this resonance through the communication, basically, or something like that. Yeah. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing, talking about how in older times people used to know this, I think that the way that I've heard Formscapes, Sir Keelan of Formscapes talk about this, is that in those times it was that there was no like individuality, though. It's like it's almost like how Barfield talks about original participation, the withdrawal of participation, then final participation, such that like we all experience we were all masters of, we were all very conscious of the timbre, like we were aware of it. But then as we developed the ego and like the sign, kind of this, the individual kind of way of being, then we lost access to that. But then you can think about the Christ event would be for Steiner as well. This is the way how we talked about it, that it would allow you to retain your individuality, which we just developed, but also re-enter into that spiritual sort of he would describe it as like the spiritual world, but it's basically like the opening of these spiritual faculties, like declamation, because I agree that like this is a lost art of extreme power, and I think about it as like, we can think about the dark arts, but maybe like, the divine arts or something, like if as we
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, awesome points. I have quite a few things to add to what you said. First of all, I am not fully aware of Rudolf Steiner and his work. I know basically that his school of thought, let's say, is called anthroposophy, which I find very interesting because it means the wisdom, human wisdom, basically.
Yeah, the wisdom of the human being.
Yeah. So this is very basically he practices what he preaches with all those things that you said about the larynx and eurythmy and all of that. So that's
well, I would like to say I'm not an expert on Steiner either. Like he has a huge corpus of work and stuff. So yeah,
I know he has the Steiner schools that a lot of people they send their kids there, and some people they really like that model, let's say, of education. So
thus it may be said, in the way in which the movement is formed, there lies, or rather the movement itself actually manifests, all that the soul wishes to express by means of this visible speech. In the same way, however, as words have their timbre, their own special tone, brought about by the feeling lying within them, so too the movement, by means of the way in which it is colored by fear, for instance, when this is expressed in a sentence, or by joy or delight. So too must the movement be permeated by feeling.
So moving beyond that, first of all, I loved in terms of your gestures, which are very evocative and expressive. I really love the fact that when you mention the word essence, you made this move like that, and that's chef kiss. And the good thing is that because we do this when we speak about essence, because and we also pull our we make the gesture, but we also pull it down. So why? Because it has gravitas. So the essence is something that it has gravitas on its own, and it also gets pulled down, let's say. So we communicate just with that very simple paralanguage, let's say, this non-verbal communication, additional cues. We subconsciously communicate all that. So even if we think, let's say, or not, the message is still goes there. So that's beautiful.
Can I say one thing about that?
Of course.
Is that I think like some will jump to thinking here about how that's reliant on kind of the shared cultural context. Like how maybe like I don't know if you've heard that like in India, instead of nodding their head, they kind of bobble their head to say yes. It's interesting, but there are also kind of other gestures, like if I point at something, like that's a very deep, everyone kind of recognizes that, but even that you might be able to argue that it's not really there. But then stuff like a smile or like my pupils dilating, like that's like everyone. I think the fundamental thing is that you have to like be able to participate in that same pattern, right? So like you have to be able to identify and recognize the pattern in your own being, such that if you've experienced it, then you can know what I mean, you know. And I'm trying to remember what exactly I said, but I don't remember. But
Yeah.
when I said
Uh,
essence,
we will catch the replay.
yeah, speaking is like the quintessence of gesture. It can ornament in a way that reveals the essence of something.
But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
though it made the appearance along with the word essence. So
yeah,
that was
yeah.
something I picked up. So yeah, shifting a bit
Mm.
in terms of communication from human to human to human to animal, let's say communication, you can also see these non-verbal communication cues taking place. Like for example, when you have a cut, let's say, between the cat and the owner of the cat, a slow blink means a very specific thing. It means that affection. It means even love. Let's say. So
You said with what? With what animal you said?
with cats,
Cats.
if a cat like slowly blinks her eyes or his eyes, let's say, to a human,
Yeah.
that means that it conveys a very specific message, very specific message, very specific message.
Yeah.
So that's also something that I find beautiful in terms of communication, because we human beings, we evolved to communicate also with animals, and that's also part of our environment, let's say. And it's not something that happened like yesterday. We've been doing that, these type of things like for millennia.
Yeah,
And
it goes to show that it's not totally dependent on some sort of like, that language is not just like something on the surface that you have to be like a super evolved human to like. Language, like these communication dynamics are very core to like even amongst animals and other animals, right? You know, like they'll be able to communicate with each other.
yeah,
I think it's very, like, it goes to show that since we can communicate with a dog, you know,
yeah,
and you know, you could say I can't just talk about the Declaration of Independence with the dog,
very specific message.
you know, but it's like maybe at the end of the day, you know, the true, what's most
Specific.
important is like just I don't know. It's you know, I just don't mean to say it's not like people will say that it's like, oh, it's I don't know. It kind of, I don't know. It's a tangent, because people will misunderstand what I'm saying and say that it's like, oh, so we'll just be silent and we'll not talk with each other, you know, because we can communicate with animals without words, and like the pre-verbal language is, that's not what I'm saying. You know, I'm saying that that's like you know, that's a different channel, and we can go very deep with that, but we've been very focused on the intellectual channel, like the meaning of the words. And I actually think that it maps to the left and right brain thing as well. Like in terms of opening back up to those kind of other aspects of communication. Yeah.
And generally speaking, I think it's safe to classify language as a psychotechnology. So I dare to say that even that then declamation also, it's a form of psychotechnology, and because it arises out of this cognitive capacity, let's say, to incorporate everything together. So it's not only the voice, but it's also the emotionality that arises along with the gestures and with the small cues and all of that. So yeah, I really find it quite fascinating, to be honest, and it's a great area to focus on and research, let's say, on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, like I think part of it was just that I was predisposed to like kind of need some sort of realization in this respect, because I was like I feel like I was almost one of those people who was using the technology unconsciously and like was very good at it, let's say being a rhetorical timbrist, but then I would but it was also just because of the way that I kind of grew up in, like I was disconnected such that there was never really deep connections with people. So then when I took acid and I was like, whoa, there's way more like communication could be way deeper, you know, if we really lean into if we pay attention to the resonance and the timbre and we resonate with the person, we empathize and, you know, we speak it with emotion. And so that really blew my mind. But I also think it's just because this is like a big thing in general that people are, you know, that like is important, that we're kind of in a sense predestined to like understand. Like I think that this is an evolutionary trajectory or something like that. But I forgot what I was going to say exactly. So I guess just to shift, just in terms of how it's interesting to study in many different angles to it. I think another thing that is perhaps relevant, which was brought to my attention, excuse me, is the mirror neurons. Oh yeah, maybe I should connect it to this video that I've been working on. So I've been working on a long video, an hour and a half so far, and it's all about this kind of musicality of speech and all sorts of things, really. But one of the clips in it is about mirror neurons. Have you ever heard about mirror neurons?
Yeah, but please elaborate. Yeah.
So I'm not an expert on them, but as I understand it, there's basically neurons that when we observe or hear someone else do a gesture or a sound, you know, and as we said before, sounds are kind of gestures, like our brain kind of, these mirror neurons basically respond as if we had made the gesture ourselves. And this is kind of like the medium through which, perhaps, you know, like approaching it in the brain neuroscience perspective, could be argued that like this is kind of the medium through which this takes place at a neurobiological level, that like these like what's going on in the brain when we relate to other people. And it's interesting to me because I think it all happens at a very fast and unconscious rate right now, such that like the mirror neurons, they respond very quickly, such that it, from what I understand, it's actually before you consciously recognize what you're looking at, like you're already participating in it basically. So like if somebody makes a smile, you're already smiling too before you even you know, it's like, and I think that's important, that so because we have to be aware of that so that we're not like caught up in the grips of rhetoricians and stuff like that, but such that it's before. And I think it's interesting because when it gets to like digital technologies and stuff like that, I think it messes with that.
The eye tracking data showed that people spent more time looking at real faces than virtual faces. Notably, the measures of brain activity showed increased cross-brain synchrony and higher signal strength levels for in-person interaction. In short, in-person interaction affords us richer social context and better processing of facial expressions than virtual. I didn't find these results very surprising. If anything, the lab setup is more favorable to virtual interaction than the real world is. Nobody had their camera off. Nobody was checking email, texting, or playing Candy Crush. There were no distractions from children, pets, or coworkers. In the real world, virtual interactions are going to be even less engaging.
You know, like I think that because there's a little bit of lag, and even though it may seem like nothing to our conscious mind, our unconscious mind is like, what's going on here? I can't see this guy's legs. You know, it's like...
I have a great example to share exactly on that. When I was a kid, like let's say 8 or even 10 years old, I was playing with the first computer games, let's say on PC, and there was a specific game called Prince of Persia. Okay, the very first one. So at some point you get the character, let's say, the avatar, and you travel through this maze, okay, in order to accomplish your quest or whatever. And because as a kid, I had a deep fear of heights. Okay, I was afraid of heights, let's say.
Gotcha.
So I was, but you know, gamers, they are really immersed into the game, right? So me as a kid, having this fear, let's say, of heights, I was playing the game, Prince of Persia, and at some point the character, the virtual avatar, let's say, had to jump over a pit full of blades or snakes or whatever. And every time I was jumping, let's say, with the virtual character, I was feeling my legs like this feeling that you feel like as if they are getting cut, let's say.
Yeah.
So I fully understand what you said with the mirror neurons.
Yeah.
And I really believe it has to do with the digital environment. It must be correlated with immersion, with the degree of immersion that the gamer, let's say, enters, and it's really focused into the game.
One more step.
Oh, get me out of here. Oh, you fell. Oh my God.
Look at the sweat. Oh my God.
What the hell is that? Hey! Stop playing, fool!
And just to conclude that story, I found a way to, like after, let's say 1 year or something like that, I found a way to conquer that fear that I had of heights. I got onto the rooftop and I started, let's say, walking towards the edge. And at first, I couldn't even step, let's say, closer than 1 meter. But I kept going every day. And after, let's say, a couple of weeks, I was able to sit on the edge, like with my hands hanging and all of that. So, yeah, that was my lesson, let's say, of how you can tackle your fears, let's say, address them head on. Yeah,
That's funny. Yeah, it's interesting because I only listened to a couple things about the mirror neurons, so I'm definitely no expert on it. I remember hearing something like it's definitely obviously it is true that like we can be deeply immersed in these virtual, like kind of like the virtual can nonetheless trigger the mirror neurons, you know, like and we can still you know, like there is some sort of resonance possible there, and I definitely think that's true, particularly with like video and like virtual 3D game spaces. You know, like, you know, I've spent definitely hundreds and hundreds of hours playing video games. I haven't played in a while now. It's been, you know, a couple of years, I think, maybe once or twice since, you know, it can be deeply immersive. And I think like video calls like this, like we can track each other to a degree, you know, and like it makes me think again about left brain, right brain stuff and text, about how, because there's even times where we can be in person with someone and we're so caught in our mental narrative, either about them or about just unrelated things, that like we don't actually encounter the other person, you know. it's like almost like the mirror neurons aren't firing, and like the syncing up and like the resonance just isn't happening, even when we're in person, you know. And it's like we get stuck in a. I think that connects as well with the whole left brain, right brain thing, because it's that there's no like holistic. It's all about very rational kind of not rational, but I suppose rational, like the just cut and dry. You know what I'm getting at? Like the reason why my brain or my mind or I go from this conversation about this psychotechnology, let's say, and then I go towards how that relates with our digital technologies, is because I see a trend that our ability to use this psychotechnology, which is fundamental to our relating with each other. And I also think that if we really get good at it, then we can really, like meet each other very deeply. Like we see at these estuary events and stuff where people are really like, wow, like that's one way. But then the other way is like where we're becoming where we're losing the ability, and we're becoming like it's like it's all becoming in the matrix, like in the virtual space, such that like I don't know, like I see it's the difference between the luciferic and the Christic, in my opinion, because the luciferic is the extrication from the body, and like I'm using some of Formscape's terminology here, where it's like it's about basically it's disembodied, like I see we're getting more and more disembodied, like and I'm not trying to say that this is no good. Everything participates in the good via its particularized good, insofar as it can be true to its good, then it is participating in divine humanity, let's say.
Like I said, that a bird makes a bad chair, and that's completely fine if I know the good of the chair and I know the good of the bird. There's no problem there.
Like I really think it's awesome that we can have conversations like this, but I see a trend that's becoming more and more disembodied. And the opposite of this is, I think, what we see in the Christian story, which is like the spiritualization of the body, which is where we become masters of the timbre and basically the instrument that is the human body, such that
it is possible for the worldly things to become a vehicle for the grace of God. We need to believe that.
If we really get good at it, then we can really like meet each other very deeply.
Technology can also be a kind of glory, like a crown, right, on the head of a king. It's an extension of your being. And so that's the mystery. And I think that that's what's being suggested in the image of the New Jerusalem.
That we shine like the Transfiguration. Like I think that was prefigured in the Transfiguration that eventually we're supposed to all be able to like do that. Whatever that was. I don't know exactly what it was, but so I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of justifying, but do you see kind of what I'm saying about that's why I think about the digital technologies and stuff,
This dual image, one of the beasts coming out of the sea and one of the city coming down from heaven.
But it's very interesting because at the same time we can like connect to some degree, and of course we can find people and we can keep the lights on at night. Like it's not, I'm not anti-technology,
Basically me myself personally, for someone that is really into computer science, let's say, in terms of a career, I am pretty anti-technology, to be honest. So not fully. And basically, I really like what is called low tech, like not the high tech type of tech.
That reminds me of analog tech. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah.
I've always thought that was cool.
Actually, there is a lot of innovation taking place in terms of analog computers. They are making a very strong comeback. So
that's cool. That's cool to hear.
Yeah. So having that said, I still believe that there is value in technology, and even social platforms and all of that. Like there is a good way to utilize them, to use them, but there are many more ways to abuse them.
Yeah.
So, as
I
we
agree.
have that is given there, and it actually when I heard you making this last point, it actually reminded me a quote by Ibsen. He's a Norwegian playwright. How it goes? It goes like this: a forest bird never wants a cage. So in a way, like
Yep.
initially, let's say, to escape into the virtual realm wasn't like our inclination, but slowly, as the years and the decades pass by, we incorporate that into our daily lives, and in a way, from forest birds, let's say, we become sparrows. So
Yeah.
we're used to it. So that's my only concern. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we, have discussions about this to figure out how to properly relate to it, because, and I don't think it's even necessarily that difficult of like figuring out what's appropriate to do. It's maybe just about how do we actually get people to respond appropriately, because we're all so addicted to technology, myself included. Like, what is the purpose of the technology? The purpose has to be to like for connecting things in the non-virtual space.
A lot of people, especially young people, they are addicted to apps like Tinder. So there is also that aspect of apps.
Yeah.
So it has to do with moving away from the virtual to the physical, to the mid space, but also you can see that there is also a whole baggage, let's say, of bad things that come with that. So it depends on the intent. I think also it depends on the let's say the decisions that the technological companies make in order to monetize. If they are making ethical decisions that's gonna benefit, let's say, their user base and therefore also the society at large.
Yeah.
But if they are only interested about making more and more money, then they will probably also engage in this non-ethical, let's say, type of decisions that have to do with technology and upgrades and algorithms and all of that. If you study the different instantiations of the algo across the different social media platforms.
Of the what?
Across the different media platforms.
No, instantiations.
If you study the algorithm,
yeah.
for example, how YouTube's algorithm works, it has nothing to do with how the algorithm on Twitter works or even on TikTok. Like the algorithm that operates within TikTok, it's much more addictive than all the others. So there is that type of aspect also that goes in. And this is why they are speaking about programmers. They are speaking about ethical guidelines in terms of coding and programming and all of that.
Yeah.
But
it reminds me of I'm sure you've seen in the Grimgriz Discord and stuff, the German Dragon talking about like it reminds me of his interests, which are like, how do we redesign media platforms and such, and how do we relate to them differently. And what he would say is that like these platforms are archaic, like in design, and like they could be so much better. And like I know he's working on a platform right now, and it would be
good for him, because if I remember from your videos, the topics that you had, he's working for quite some time with another a person that he actually met from his channel,
Yeah,
So,
Marvin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So
Yeah, and I guess it's some kind of like it's almost like a meta platform in a way where like the
Mhm.
people would be able to change it to their own liking or something like it's like almost like the framework for a social media platform, and then
yeah,
people would be able to alter it as they like or something. I'm not sure.
yeah. Many years ago, there used to be one platform called Ning, Ning, and I think it's still out there. But these days, you have to pay in order to access it. It used to be free, and one of the cool things about it was that it allowed for this. It was like a Facebook that you could fully customize. So it was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
But at the end, they had to change their model, let's say their business model, in order to make it, let's say, you have to pay in order to access it.
Yeah,
I don't know about the actual dynamics there, because startups these days, technological startups, they go either after a very big user base without necessarily making money. And the reason they do that is because they want to attract angel investors and investors in general, let's say, or people that they are willing to just buy their platform. And the other way is like people that they don't really care about making money, and then just go for the long term, let's say, and they say that we will figure it out, how we will make this work. So it's two completely different strategies. So
yeah.
Hopefully they will make it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think maybe probably part of the appropriate response to our situation would also be like and I think we're doing this to some extent, at least hopefully right now, like to instill some sort of cultural transformation, or like at least an awareness about these things, and also like an awareness of these subtle dynamics, such that as we like there are some kids these days that are like choosing to turn away from smartphones and stuff, and it's not a whole lot of them. Most people are just watching TikToks, but it's like I think that there is a bit of a split happening, where it's like some people are being like, I don't want to be eaten by the machine, and I think that's happening. And also just to hold up the beauty of like, I think about this in terms of sociology, to be honest, in terms of like the beauty of the natural world and of family and quality food and stuff like that. Like it's I don't know, I think those things can really be inspiring for people as well, like like thinking in terms of how do we avoid the matrixification, I think, and even just simple things like renormalizing phone calls and stuff like that, because even though we can get by with text, I think about it as we're participating in this trend or something like that. And even, it's not the worst thing, of course. It's not, I don't mean to call anybody a heretic for texting or anything, It's just that like, it's like, as we, like, I think that we should kind of rebel to some extent, we should do what we can to remain as human as possible, to do calls as possible, and like, even with video games, like if people are going to play video games together, I suggest you go to your friend's house with your computer and you play video games in the same room, and it's like these types of things I think are more important than we realize, because in the TLC we all know this, right? But there are thousands and thousands of people who spend every night just playing video games, with no physical relationship, and that's and that's what really fires me up, and it's all because I find those true encounters very beautiful, that's why I'm so passionate about this.
Yeah. Actually, I was gonna mention also, like, I think the way away from the matrix, let's say, as you called it, it is TLC.
Yeah,
That's why we all gather there. I remember one time in one of the many live streams of TLC, I posted in the Hive Mind like two things. One had to do with the algorithm. Like, is the algorithm a player in this little corner? And the answer I got back, I think it was from Neil. It was yes. It's like it's an active player. Like
I think
it's
so.
a virtual player, but it's also part because it plays a role, let's say, of driving the discussion and all of that. So that's one thing. And the other thing had to do with this. I really honestly believe this. Like, a lot of people think that the transformer models and the large language models specifically, they are the future of technology and all of that. Man, I truly believe that the future, the next best thing, let's say, in the internet sphere, let's call it like that, in the internet, is TLC. Like, it is the solution that these fellowship, let's say, loosely found, and we are all trying to understand it because it's really, that's like, I don't even have the proper words to describe this. And maybe it's better that I don't have the proper words. Like, it's the journey that matters, and that's the good part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tend to agree. I think it would of course we would have to maybe then what follows from that is maybe talking about what is maybe just a brief, and then we could probably wrap up. I told I have a call planned with Sherry. Actually, we planned for 7 minutes from now. What is TLC, right? And I think what really defines it, I think to a large extent, is the personalism, basically, like and also the aim towards basically true communion, which I think of as ultimately would be in person, like because that's what we see people talking on Discord one-on-one, and we see people getting in voice chats, and we see people doing video calls, and we see people posting videos on YouTube and watching them with their eyes, and then we all talk about them out further, and it's like this recursive things. But I think kind of the defining thing is that it's about these personal relationships and how, sorry, I get very excited about this. It's like, because I agree. I think it's exciting happenings, I think we live in a wonderful but also scary time. And I would say that it's like the fact that there's like video calls and meetups. What would you characterize? Because we could also talk about it in the spiritual angle of like the spirit of TLC, and it's like.
Yeah, let me make a quick comment there in terms of the fellowship, let's say.
Sure. Yeah.
I really love the following aspects. First of all, it's everything that you described, but it's also this asynchronous mode of communication, and also the synchronous, like we have the live stream, and we also have I post a video and somebody else will pick it up and reply, and then another conversation is gonna emerge, or something else. And that something else part, that's what I personally find truly fascinating, because it includes things like initiatives like branding, that we see a lot of people like engaging in that.
Yeah.
That's a novel form. Like we're actually creating art here. So and it's not something that it's art for art's sake. It's what Chad said. It's like, no, I want to create it for Grim, so he can use it on his channel, so other people can also see it, get inspired, create their own, and then maybe PVK will pick it up, like something that branding that someone else like Rako created, let's say. Also, in that something else framework, I will also place there things like PVK is not having a live stream this Friday, so Green decides to have one in order to fill that seat. It's not that PVK asked Green to do it. Green did it because of the sense of the fellowship. You understand, like, hey, there is like 30 people or even more that they were expecting this live stream, because it's the end of their week and the work week, and that's what they do. They want to chill with PVK and the rest of TLC that they will appear and join on camera and whatever. And the last thing that I want to add that I really find interesting, it's this subtle form of synchronicities that are taking place in the background, like how we started this conversation. I had that particular talk, let's say, with someone outside of TLC, and you were also considering the very same topic, and it's not a common topic, it's something super specific. So,
that's true.
Yeah. So I get this a lot, like when I discuss with my TLC friends. So yeah.
No, I've heard that from other, like in slightly other different spaces as well. Like, it's very interesting. These, you're bringing in like the whole temporality aspect, both in the sense of asynchronous nature and also the synchronicity aspect. It's super interesting to me, because generally I would tend to think about like the asynchronous nature of these platforms as like as a hindrance, such that it prevents the true immediacy of contact and stuff. However, it is obviously true that it's like the flip side of the coin would be almost like the dissonance of non-immediacy, insofar as it does allow for other things. You can put down your phone and then come back and like meeting people of like mind and coming to interesting intellectual connections like that wouldn't have happened probably without the internet, people on the other side of the world and such. But it's kind of like sleeping, like being awake would be immediate communication, and then
I think it's the dreaming aspect that can take place both while sleeping and while being awake. Like, it's a beautiful thing to be able to dream, let's say, the future in a positive way and not in a bad way, like a nightmare. So this is, I believe, what TLC affords us to do, like to dream and to have hope, let's say, that we will meet one day, we will encounter face to face, and this thing will keep going on. That's it.
People, I hope people listen to this, and I hope it fires people up. It's like, come join the TLC so that we can change the world outside of the internet.
Yeah. The internet is internet. Anyway,
so I suppose
this was great, man. So I'm really glad that we had this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. That was pretty wild. That's exactly what you were talking about. Yeah. And this morning. Yeah, is there any kind of other thoughts that, I don't know, anything maybe we could come down, like land the plane a bit. Is there anything else on your mind, or?
Well, I am pretty excited because in 2 days after the elections that you guys are gonna have, I will be arriving at the United States for the first time.
Oh,
So,
yeah?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I was actually planning to go to the North Estuary, but there was a delay in getting my passport issued by the U.S. Embassy. So I got it, and I've decided to. I couldn't change the destination, so I decided just to postpone the trip for a bit. And yeah, I will be.
So you're headed to Olympia. Cool. Are you gonna so you'll see like Nate and stuff?
Yeah.
Cool, man. That's
and
awesome.
And President Foxman, hopefully PVK event. So
Cool. Yeah, that's good,
cool.
man. Cool. I wish you. Hopefully, our country is not just totally in flames when you get here. Yeah. No promises. Like it seems. I have no idea. I don't know. From what I can tell now, it looks like Trump is gonna win, but who the hell can say? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's gonna win, and I don't know what is gonna happen. Especially, I don't know if you are gonna announce the results on the same day or not. So I'm expecting to see that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about something like that. Yeah. Let's hope that we we'll see. Let's hope that you make it to America and you can, it all goes smoothly, because America is not as bad as it looks in some places. In some places, it's way worse than it looks.
Yeah, cool. I'm planning to visit the Olympia, Seattle region, and also, if God allows, I'm gonna visit California. So
cool. Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, I've never been to the West Coast. I live on the East Coast, so yeah. But hopefully you'll be back someday out here on the East Coast, maybe. Yeah. Do you have relatives here or anything, or is it kind of like a?
No. It's a TLC thing.
Cool.
I want to meet my people.
Yeah.
Find the others.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'm just wondering. So, yeah, I'm wondering if you'll ever be back. I'm missing my opportunity to meet you, but I assume you'll hopefully be back one day. Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to join the West Estuary, the one that Chad is.
Yeah.
He wants to make in next year in 2025 in August in Chicago. So that would be
great. I'm
great.
hoping to go to that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Maybe we'll meet each other there.
Cool. Okay. Great.
All right, man.
Shari.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Talk to you.
Save the date for an estuary-inspired event. Music, food, discussion, speakers, and fellowship. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit, Chicago, Illinois, August 22nd through the 24th of 2025. Visit and bookmark midwestuary.com for future details and updates. Stay tuned for the event that we know you won't want to miss. Thank you for your time and attention.